Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to go on the record in docket number 190600531 in the matter of changes to the rules and regulations of the Oil and Gas Conservation Commission of the state of Colorado. My name is John Peskin. I'm the hearing officer that's been assigned to this rulemaking. To my right is Mimi Larson. She's the Hearings and Regulatory Affairs Manager. We also have Hannah Hickam to her right. She's sort of facilitating the Zoom host. How many people do we have online, Hannah?
27.
27 people are online. So I'm going to go through a roll call like we did at the initial pre-hearing conference. By the way, this is the final pre-hearing conference, and it's June 7th, 2019. It's approximately 1:12 p.m. and we're at the offices of the Colorado Oil and Gas Conservation Commission. So I'm going to start with a roll call, and I'm not sure how to do it. Hannah, will you let me know when someone online responds, or will I be able to hear them?
Yes, I'm going to ask them to roll call by sending me a message with their name.
Okay.
And then I will read all the names.
Okay. Okay. All right. 350 Colorado.
Sorry, I believe some folks can't hear, so we're just trying to
okay.
that they can.
That's okay. I'll keep going. Adams County Communities for Drilling. What?
Adams County is online. I've got Christine, I believe.
But is it Adams County Board of County Commissioners? Say again? Who is that?
Sorry, say that one more time.
If you're asking for Gunnison County is present.
Thank you, Gunnison County.
People on the phone are having a terrific, difficult time hearing you.
Is that still?
Yes. Yes. So I think I answered for Adams County because I can't hear you.
Okay, thank you.
Is the volume any better?
We're going to make a very great effort to speak up so everyone on Zoom can hear us.
All right, I'll start over. 350 Colorado. Adams County Communities for Drilling Accountability Now. Adams County Board of County Commissioners.
Here.
Yay. Anadarko.
Here.
Anthem Ranch Community Association Board of Directors.
Present.
Thank you. Associated Governments of Northwest Colorado. Augustus, wait. Oh.
Can you hear us?
Yes. Augustus Energy Partners, LLC. Barrett Engineering. Danette and Charles Barrett. Bayswater Exploration. Be the Change. Connie Beach. Connie Beach. I apologize to everyone in the room. Barbara Binder. Boulder County.
Boulder County, is that what you said?
Yes.
Boulder County, City of Lafayette, and City and County of Broomfield are the allied local governments, and we're present.
Thank you. Broomfield concerned. Broomfield Health and Safety First. Broomfield Moms Active Community. Citizens Advocate. Citizens for a Healthy Community. Climate Reality Denver, Boulder Chapter.
Present.
Thank you. West Slope, Koga. Town of Colbrand. Mr. Nguyen, are you on the Zoom meeting? Camro.
There you go. There's a rope on it.
Colorado Coalition for a Livable Climate. Colorado Environmental Advocates. Colorado Oil and Gas Association. Colorado Petroleum Association. Colorado Petroleum Council / API.
And I'm sorry, if we could just have the folks on Zoom mute your phones, because other individuals on Zoom are getting a lot of feedback. And then I know it'll be a little difficult, but when we call your name, if you're on Zoom, you can unmute yourself and then answer. Thank you.
Mr. Martin, I have Colorado Petroleum Association as being represented by Angie Binder. That's okay. I just wanted to clarify. Okay. So Colorado Petroleum Association. All right. Colorado Rising. Colorado Sierra Club.
Present.
Thank you. Confluence. ConocoPhillips. Conservation Colorado. City of Craig.
Present.
Crestone Peak. Delta County. Christie Douglas.
Who?
Delta County.
Present.
Oh, thank you.
This is really hard to hear. If you're not right on the microphone, you need to.
Thank you for the suggestion. Yeah. Yeah. All right, for the people on Zoom, is this better? All right. All right, is Kirby Nguyen on the phone? Yeah, let's start. Let's go through the 14 you represent so I can get them checked off. Can you do it alphabetically? Go ahead.
Well, I got to put my lips started. They weren't shaped. They were three balls.
All right, I have it. How about Garfield?
Present.
Okay. Delta County.
Present.
Jackson County.
Present.
Mesa County.
Present.
Moffett County.
Present.
Montezuma County.
Present.
Rio Blanco County.
Present.
City of Craig.
Present.
Town of Colbrand.
Present.
Town of Meeker.
Present.
Town of Newcastle.
Present.
Town of Parachute.
Present.
Town of Rangeley.
Present.
And Town of Silt.
Present.
Okay, thank you.
Marshall County too, right?
Yes. Okay. Patricia Dunn. East Cherry Creek Valley Water and Sanitation District. Energy Council. Thank you. Erie Thriving. I'm sorry, who was the last person to speak?
Colorado Coalition for Livable Climate and 350 Colorado are present. And I would like to ask questions here and I think communicate.
Okay, we're not at that point yet, but we're just doing a roll call right now, okay?
Well, what am I listening to on YouTube?
I'm just going to ask you to hold your questions for a little bit. I'm just trying to get through a roll call. We'll get back to those as soon as possible, okay?
Is this a CIBC Prehearing?
Yes. You're welcome. Thank you. Erie Thriving. Thank you. Extraction. Firestone Mineral Holdings. Front Range Residents for Environmental Safety and Health. Grand Valley Citizens Alliance Battlement Concerned Citizens. Great Western and Grizzly Petroleum. Gunnison County. Eileen Heitman Estate, Colleen Heitman, Personal Representative. James Kettler. Sarah Kettler. Vicky Kettler. But James is not. Okay. League of Oil and Gas Impacted Coloradans. Lookout Alliance. Magpie. Medical Symposium Educational Group. Thank you. Judy and John Myers. J. Gail Moody. Morning Gun. Mothers Out Front. Nickel Road. Susan Noble. North Range Concerned Citizens. Okay. Oil and Gas Education Group. Oak Creek. PDC. Residents' Rights. Thank you. Joseph Rock, Jr. Safe Superior Citizens Action Group. David and Rana Sanchez. Sand Ridge Exploration and Production. Deborah J. Shannon. Terra Energy Partners, LLC, and TEP Rocky Mountain, LLC. City of Thornton. Was that a here? Oh, thank you. Thunder Ridge Resources. Together Against Neighborhood Drilling. Top Operating Company. Ursa Operating Company. Randy Webb. Weiss Consulting. Thank you. Weld Air and Water. Weld County. Western Colorado Alliance. Western Slope Conservation Center. Westminster Community Alliance for Protection and Empowerment. Wildgrass. Okay, thank you. Not at all painful. All right. I might as well, yeah. All right, thank you everybody for bearing with me through that. All right, now we're going to talk about the guidelines for participating at the hearing, which is going to be on Monday, June 17th. So I think it's important to notice the distinction between public comments, which occur at the beginning of every commission hearing, and comments that are made when a matter is called for consideration by the commission. Those are two different animals. So if you are a party to,
Sorry. Folks on Zoom, if you could just mute your lines, that will help us. Thank you.
thank you. So if you are a party to this rulemaking, meaning you filled out a request for party status and you're here today or you're on Zoom, you are not allowed to participate in the public comments at the hearing regarding this rulemaking. If you want to sign up for public comment and make a public comment about something other than the rulemaking, that's perfectly acceptable. But we're going to reserve the time for comments for the rulemaking when the rulemaking is called to be considered by the commission. So, does anybody have any questions about that? Yes, sir. I would just caution you that if your comments have to do with this particular rulemaking, that you wait and save those for when the rulemaking is called up before the commission. If that's part of your pre-hearing statement, part of your position, part of what you want to say to the commissioners, that can be addressed when the matter is called. So if you are a party and you did not file a pre-hearing statement or a response to a pre-hearing statement, then you can still participate during this rulemaking in one of two ways. And that would, you'd be in the category of what's known as a 510 participant. So 510 statements go to the commission in one of two ways. Either ahead of time via a written statement, which we are not going to put any limitations on. There's no page limitations, no guidelines whatsoever. But we need that submitted to me and the rulemaking's email address by Thursday, June 13th at noon. That will be made as part of the commissioner's portfolio, and they'll get that ahead of time before the hearing starts. If you do not want to file a written 510 statement, then you can make an oral statement when the matter is called before the commission, and you'll have 2 minutes to make an oral statement. So those are the two ways that you can participate in the rulemaking if you are a party and you did not file a pre-hearing statement or a response to a pre-hearing statement. All right. So now I want to talk about the order of the hearing. When the commission actually calls the matter up, meaning when it's on our agenda and the rulemaking gets called as the actual hearing matter for them to consider it, the order is going to be 510 statements will be made at that point, the oral statements. After that, we're going to have a staff position statement, then the parties' statements, in other words, the presentation of your cases as you've already requested. And then finally, after all of the party statements are done, then the commissioners will enter into deliberation. That's the order of the hearing for the rulemaking. So now we need to talk about the time allocation for the parties. So we have gone through the pre-hearing statements and we've grouped them according to the substance of the arguments raised. We have created 5 different groups. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask for certain people to be designees from each one of these groups to contact me directly by next Wednesday, the 12th. Because what we're going to do is we're going to give you a choice. We're giving you a block of time to use collaboratively, or you're going to be able to make individual statements. So I'll go through the grouping and I'll ask someone by name to be the representative for that group. So for the first group, what we're just calling group number 1, consists of the allied local governments, Gunnison County, and Thornton. We have allocated a total of 15 minutes for those 3 entities, or you can have 5 minutes each. I know that is 6 and 1/2 dozen the other, but there's a method to it all. So for the yellow group, we would ask that Kim Sanchez be the designee for group number 1. Ms. Sanchez, can you respond via the chat box if you're online? And we'll give her a minute to get through that. Okay, so the next group consists of Weld County and the Western local governments. And we're going to ask that Kirby Wynn be the designee for them. You have 15 minutes as a group or 5 minutes each. The third group consists of Camro, Moody, Heitman, Firestone, Thunder Ridge, and Rock. For that group, we're going to ask Mr. Lewis Prescott to be the designee. And what that means is, what I'm asking you is by next Wednesday at noon to send an email to myself telling me what your election is, how you choose to use that time. Either 15 minutes collectively or 5 minutes apiece. Okay, now we get into the 2 big groups. The fourth group is going to be basically industry, and that consists of API, Anadarko, Augustus, Koga, Conoco, Crestone, Energy Council, Extraction, Great Western and Grizzly Petroleum, Magpie, Nickel Road, PDC, Sandridge, and Top Operating. We have designated 1.5 hours as a total for the group, or 5 minutes each. And we are going to ask that Jim Martin be the designee for that group. So for the last group, what we're going to, hold on one second. Oh, yeah. Okay, for the last group, the citizen groups, this is a longer list. 350 Colorado and Coalition for a Livable Climate, ACDAN, Anthem Ranch, Be the Change, Broomfield Concerned, Broomfield Health and Safety First, Broomfield Moms Active Community, Citizens for a Healthy Community, Climate Reality Denver Boulder Chapter, Colorado Environmental Advocates, Colorado Rising, Connie Beach, Conservation Colorado, Logic, Western Colorado Alliance, Grand Valley, Battlement Concerned Citizens, Erie Thriving, Front Range Residents for Environmental Safety and Health, Lookout Alliance, Oil and Gas Education Group, Physicians for Social Responsibility, Medical Symposium Educational Group, Mothers Out Front, North Range Concerned Citizens, Barrett, Douglas, Kettler, Myers, Noble, Sanchez, and Shannon, Resident Rights, Sierra Club, Together Against Neighborhood Drilling, Weiss Consulting, Weld Air and Water, Westminster Community Alliance, and Wildgrass Oil and Gas Committee. We've allocated 2.5 hours as a group, or 5 minutes each. And we would ask that Matt Samuelson be the representative for that group. So again, I need a response by next Wednesday at noon, June 12th, what each designee's group's choice is, how they choose to allocate that time. And that will help us prepare the agenda for the commission on the 17th.
And this is Mimi Larson. Just one thing to clarify. When we say there's a block of time, for instance, 2.5 hours or 5 minutes per group, that 5 minutes is for the pre-hearing statement group. So for instance, there was a group that came together, Western Local Governments, that accounts for approximately 14 local governments. Not each local government would have 5 minutes, but because they filed a pre-hearing statement and grouped themselves together as Western local governments would have 5 minutes. So if you could please just keep that in mind, there would be 5 minutes for each pre-hearing statement group or coalition that came together. Ms. Merlin?
How will witnesses and exhibits be presented?
The final, so Ms. Merlin asked how exhibits and witnesses would be presented. That will be addressed in the final pre-hearing order that will come out.
Okay, so in the last day or so, we've had some motions begin to be filed. Motions in limine, motions to strike. The case management order prohibited the filing of motions without leave of the hearing officer. However, in despite of that standing written order, we're going to allow them in. If the parties wish to file a response, they can, but we need them by Wednesday, June 12th at 9 a.m. We are not allowing replies. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Larson to talk to you a little bit more about the motions.
So if we anticipate that there will be an opportunity for folks to present to the full commission on the motions, so that will be handled as a first order of business when we call the matter on Monday for the rulemaking. So. Ms. Verlin.
Being that motions were explicitly prohibited by the case management order without leave, there was no opportunity for anyone else to file motions. So is there now a deadline that is opened up for the rest of us to file motions?
Well, the entities that filed a motion, they did so. They filed.
We can't hear you at all.
The question was whether additional motions will be accepted. Again, as the case management order said, that motions are prohibited without leave. The motions that were filed, the hearing officer has decided that they will be allowed in. If another party wishes to file a motion, they may certainly do so, and the hearing officer will make a determination as to whether or not they will be allowed in.
But at no point will we extend the deadline for filing responses beyond what's already been set forth. 1 second, Mr. Salazar. Yes, sir.
So, Ms. Larson, you said that motions would be the first order of business. How will that proceed? Will there be argument? Will parties be responding to commission questions? Will a certain block of time be set apart for the motion deliberation?
Certainly, there will be time set aside for the motion deliberation because it will need to be addressed in the course of the rulemaking, and we'll outline in the case management order what that time allotment would be. Mr. Salazar.
So I have a question about now opening up for motions. So does that mean that a party could file a motion, let's say on Tuesday, and then you expect a response by Wednesday, or file a motion on Wednesday expecting the parties to file a response on that day? I mean, we have no idea because they weren't allowed without leave, and the parties in question never sought leave to file their motion. So now you're allowing them. So I'm just trying to get a handle here on the due process part of it. So when do you expect motions to be filed since we have response deadlines by Wednesday?
Mr. Salazar's question more or less restated Ms. Merlin's question, which is whether or not there is a timeline or a deadline for motions to be filed. I'll just refer back to the case management order, which said that motions are prohibited unless you have leave from the hearing officer. In this case, the hearing officer has allowed the motions to come in. Responses to the two motions that I'm aware of that have been filed are due Wednesday at 9 a.m. If another party is going to file a motion, they certainly may do so and seek leave of the hearing officer. The hearing officer will make a determination as to whether or not that motion is allowed in.
What standard are you using to decide if a motion is allowable? So, for example, extraction filed a motion to strike. Apparently, there's motions in limine. If other parties file motions to strike and motions in limine, I imagine that the standard that you apply to allow those in will, I guess, allow these other motions to be approved by you. Then is that correct?
Each motion will be looked at. If another motion is filed, the hearing officer will take a look at it and determine whether or not it's allowed in.
Okay, I guess I don't have an idea of what the standard is, but if it's just straight discretion, then is that what it is? Just straight discretion of the hearing officer?
I'll just go ahead and refer you back to the case management order.
Which says that there's no motions. Okay, thank you.
Okay, can the parties, hopefully the parties online can still hear me. That concludes everything I needed to discuss at this final pre-hearing conference. I see a hand from Mr. Martin. Enrique, do we have the microphone? Oh. Oh, there it is. Oh.
A quick question for time for presentations. Do you anticipate that parties will do both their oral presentations and rebuttal at the same time? In this proceeding, issues have come up that one might not anticipate. Will there be separate time for rebuttal?
We're going to leave that up to the commissioners. I think it would be in the party's discretion whether they were to use all of the time allocated or to reserve some of it for rebuttal. That's going to be the strategy determined by the party.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, I'm Dave Nevlin, and the question is, what will the order of presentation be among the groups?
Yeah, it's undecided as of today. We need to get those responses. In other words, how are parties going to use that time? If parties say, I'm in group 1 and I want to use my 5 minutes separately, then we'll have to determine it at that point. Does that make sense? You look confused.
Yeah, and the question went, you've got 5 different groups.
Right.
Do you have an order of presentation
Oh,
at this
no,
point between the groups?
not at this time, no. Hold on a second, Ms. Merlin. We've had some other hands in the back for a minute. And for the people online, I apologize. There was questions about order of presentation. The answer is we've not determined that at this point. Thank you.
Yes, I have a question. My name is Christy Douglas. I'd like to know how you chose the representative for each group, and I'm not even familiar with the person that you chose as the representative if we decide to go as a group for the citizens.
This is Mimi Larson. So I looked at folks in the audience and I listened to individuals who are on Zoom that I was aware are representatives of parties in each of the groups. And I asked Hearing Officer Peskin to task those individuals with conveying to us the response as to whether or not that group is going to be able to take the group time or individual time.
So they were arbitrarily chosen then? And not, you didn't consult with anyone on who should be chosen as the representative?
So Ms. Douglas, as I said, I looked at for folks in the audience and that's how I chose those representatives.
I disagree with that process.
I appreciate, Ms. Douglas, we're going to have to move on to other questions. Mr. Sura, you've had a question for a bit. Yes.
Thank you. I would like to request leave to file a motion to strike, and I'm just wondering do I do that now? Do I do that in writing? Do I file the motion and have that be part of the motion?
All motions will need to be in writing, so please get that into us as soon as possible and just request leave and we will consider it.
Thank you.
So given the number of citizen groups that will be grouped together, it's hard to anticipate whether some of them might prefer to take the 5 minutes and some of them might prefer to take the lump sum. Will we be allowed to split the groups so that a certain portion have decided to take their 5 minutes out of the portion allocated to the group as a whole?
Unfortunately, no. You must realize we have 2 days. The commission hearing is 2 days. We need to ensure that these rules are considered. Parties have the opportunity to present their case. So there is the opportunity for the groups, as Mr. Hearing Officer Peskin went through. Your group would have a combined total of 2.5 hours. However you wish to allocate that time, if you choose to go with the block, you may do so. And if you're unable to come to a consensus, then each entity within that group and each entity that group themselves in a pre-hearing statement would then have 5 minutes.
So as a follow-up to that, Andrew Forkus Goodmanson, so our options are either 2.5 hours or 30-odd 5-minute sections. There's no room in between those two.
So there are 26 entities within that 2.5 hour block. And again, those entities elected to come together and group themselves for purposes of the pre-hearing statements. So there would be 26 entities that would have 5 minutes per entity to present to the commission.
So can I follow up with that?
Yes.
So not to belabor this point, but we either can choose 26 separate 5-minute presentations or one 2.5-hour presentation,
That is correct.
and we have to get the consent of all the groups to do that. I mean, like, how can you explain how you expect 26 different groups who filed 26 separate pre-hearing statements on 26 separate sets of issues?
Well, actually, there weren't necessarily separate sets of issues. There were common themes that were evident throughout pre-hearing statements. Hence, that's why those entities were grouped into a group. So, and I will say that in prior rulemakings, in order to ensure that there's an orderly presentation, in order to ensure that the commission has time to hear the presentations, to ask questions, and to deliberate, we have had to consolidate groups. So this is not the first time that this has occurred. We only have time for a few more questions. Yes.
Could they not have an early recording and the remaining restrictions be
You know, certainly that will be up to the group to make that decision as how they wish to allocate the time. No, there's still, I apologize if there was any confusion on what I just said. There's still 2.5 hours. If that group elects to have 13 entities come together and present for an hour and a half, they may do so. We're certainly not going to dictate how you elect to group yourselves within that group. We have 2.5 hours or 5 minutes per entity.
As a representative of FRESH, my name is Judith Coet. As a citizen and not a lawyer, first of all, I had never heard the name of that person that you designated for the citizen groups. I think that almost none of our groups have ever heard of the person that you designated. We don't even know who he is. So how can you say that he represents us?
So I hate to do this, but if I could ask Mr. Samuelson to stand. Mr. Samuelson is here.
Hi, I'm Matt Samuelson. I'm with Conservation Colorado, Logic, Western Colorado Alliance, Fileman Mesa. And yeah, so maybe this will be a clarification. You're not looking for us to represent all of these groups. You're just looking to get an email sent to you. And we just had a little confusing. We went from unanimous consent, it's either all together or 5 minutes, to now all of a sudden we have the ability to decide how we want to divide up that 2.5 hours amongst ourselves.
No, no, it is still just 2.5 hours. Or if you cannot come to a decision as to whether or not you're going to use that 2.5 hour block, then each entity would then have 5 minutes. I understood the question to be, if within your group, some of you elect to give one entity an hour and a half to make a presentation and then leave the hour for the other 25 entities to allocate that time, that would be up to you. But again, the offer is, and what we will only be able to accommodate is 2.5 hours for those entities that are part of the group that we called out. If you're unable to decide if you would like to come together and make one presentation, several presentations, however you wish to have the presentations ordered and made to the commission within that 2.5 hours, you can then say you would each have each of those entities that came together for the pre-hearing statements would each have 5 minutes.
And will you be sending out an email with these lists to everybody and all the parties?
Yes.
My question is regarding motions and responses. And with the hearing upcoming the next week, when are you making decisions regarding motions, since some of them are asking to have sections removed and et cetera? When will we know in advance of our presentations? Will there be a decision, or will it be on the day of the hearing? How will this work?
So the commission ultimately, the 9-member commission ultimately is the body that will need to make that decision. There may be a recommendation that comes from the hearing officer on those motions to the commission, but the commission will have to make that decision on those motions.
On the day of the,
They would make the decision when they're in session on the day of the hearing.
earlier in the morning, they have another part to the meeting, or when this is heard?
When this matter is heard.
I have a question. Now, are the commissioners, is this going to be their first opportunity to see what the rest of us submitted as objections or suggestions concerning this rulemaking and the entire rulemaking process itself? Or because I, for instance, have asked for their email addresses so that we could give them copies of the 9 pages of comments we initially submitted. I've never received an answer to that.
So Mr. Doe's question for those on Zoom is whether or not when the commissioners will have the opportunity to review the record that is before them in this rulemaking. So all of the filings that we have received are available on our website. It's publicly available. The commissioners are aware that all of those documents are available on our website. I think we have time for one more question.
Will your rulemaking and decisions be based off from pre-SB 181 regulations?
I'm not quite sure I understand the question.
Your decisions on the motions and the rulemaking for these motions, will the commission be making these decisions based off from pre-SB 181?
The commission, including the commissioners and staff, any decision that is rendered by the commission will be made according to the law.
Great, thanks.
Okay, I think that's it. So we will adjourn now. Thank you.